Grateful to have you all here and grateful to see the energy in the room. I'm Brett Bearclough. I'm the Vice President for DISA and DoD Independent for Mantech Corporation. We're sponsoring these activities today. I've been given the opportunity to introduce Steve Wallace, and then he'll introduce the panel. Steve Wallace is the Chief Technology Officer of the Defense Information Systems Agency. He also serves as the Director of DISA's Emerging Technology Directorate. Mr. Wallace's focus is on delivering innovative processes, services, capabilities across the agency. The EM Directorate develops, executes, prioritizes, and collaborates EM-based needs such as browser isolation, software-defined networking, and assured identity. Previously, Mr. Wallace served as the Technical Director of DISA's Development and Business Center. Prior to joining DISA, Mr. Wallace was a government contractor for Computer Sciences Corporation. Mr. Wallace has a Master's of Science in Cybersecurity and a Bachelor of Science in Communication, both from Capital College. He holds a CISSP certification and is the graduate of the Harvard Kennedy School Senior Executive Program. Most importantly, Mr. Wallace is an expert off-road vehicle driver. We welcome him now to lead and introduce the Thunderdome panel. Mr. Wallace.
Thank you. I don't know if I'd say expert. I've hit a few trees in my time and rolled a few four-wheelers, but I'll take it. All right, those of you in the back, can you hear me? All right. Appreciate the packed house. Appreciate the enthusiasm around this thing that we lovingly call Thunderdome. So with that, I will introduce our panel, starting with Dr. Angela Landris, Mr. Drew Malloy. I refer to you, Mr. Take it or leave it, and Joe Brinker. So each of these fine folks comes from the Cyber Directorate here at DISA. So what the heck is this thing that we call Thunderdome, other than the interesting name? And Angie had one of the best descriptions for what Thunderdome really means. But the reality is for some time we've sat back and looked and seen how the IT game has changed, frankly. Throughout the 2010s, we watched data move about. Prior to that, we had NIPRNet, where both our users and our data sat, together, and we had the castle and moat sort of approach where we had our internet access points and life was wonderful. The reality is in the 2010s, data started to move about, and then later, and then accelerated by the pandemic, the users became far more mobile as well. So that idea of backhauling users into that castle and moat environment, just to turn around and send them back out to access the things, the resources that they were trying to access, not really a tenable design anymore, doesn't add a lot from the security perspective, the assurance benefits. So we set out to how can we address that problem and how can we really get after it and try to lead the way. There's been a lot of talk about zero trust for the past few years in the department. I will tell you myself, I for some time, I backed away because you can walk this floor and hear an awful lot about zero trust and all the different things that it means to folks, and it really caught strong buzzword sort of levels. And then I met with a pretty large company shortly. Well, shoot, we met with Google and they talked to us about their Beyond Corp journey and what that actually meant to them, and it really kind of brought us back into that fold. So, so with that, let's get into the questions with the panel here. If we can go next slide, please. Wait, I've got yep. See, I blew it that fast. They told me I had a clicker, and I asked for a slide anyway.
Do not trust Steve with a clicker.
Okay, now we're fighting each other. There we go. All right. So let's talk about what this zero trust thing is and what it means, right? So we could go and do a little, if you guys remember the jaywalking segment from the Tonight Show, we could go out here and we could do a little jaywalking and walk the floor and ask what zero trust means. I'd actually really love to do that and record the answers. But, for time, we would get all sorts of interesting feedback. So with that, let's start with the first question to the panelists. and let's talk about your take and what zero trust means to each one of you. So with that, Angie, I'll start with you.
Oh, okay. All right.
You
Zero
weren't
trust.
expecting that one, were you?
Woo. All right. So I'm Angie. You don't have to call me Dr. Landers. It's actually kind of awkward for me. You can just call me Angie. So what is zero trust? Zero trust is basically three principles, right? So there's lots of different definitions out in industry and even in the federal government. But Joe's team spent a lot of time with our neighbors across the street developing the zero trust reference architecture for the DoD, about 2.5 years. And what it boils down to is three things: verify the user and the device, make access and privileges conditional, and verify applications and data explicitly. If you do those three things, you can pretty much feel pretty confident that you have a zero trust solution.
All right, Drew.
Yeah, I mean, I would concur with everything Dr. Landris said, and I would, I would probably add that this is very much rooted in strong identity, both persona and machine-based identity. To make those validations, zero trust is really about the you'll hear the assume breach mindset, right? And assume you're already compromised, and what are you going to do to protect yourself? So figuring out, with that in mind, how do you design and architect a system that assumes that you're already being compromised, and how to detect that, which has a very strong continuous monitoring component, right? And how do you manage that, which has a very strong automation component? So I think those are probably in addition to what Angie laid out.
Being the third on the panel.
You just have to move it
Pull it
closer.
closer.
So being
Yep.
the third on the panel, they took all the good answers.
Are you-
I
Are you not on?
don't know. Maybe
Is
they
that-
don't want to hear me. They turned my mic off. They don't want to hear what I'm saying.
You're giving it the full Ricky Bobby treatment.
Yeah,
with the
sorry about
microphone.
that.
I don't know what
Wow,
to do with my
okay.
hands.
This microphone works. Okay. So, yeah, I too am not going to go against anything Dr. Landers said. I know better. But no, they're absolutely spot on with what they're saying. I think I would only add that, zero trust is not something new in and of itself. It's really an evolution from, as Mr. Wallace was saying, what we've done architecturally over the past, several decades of, castle and moat. But we've seen that that's not enough. As technology and the adversaries techniques have evolved, our design and architecture and how we operate and defend our networks has not evolved in kind. And really, what zero trust does is it allows us to get after that. And really, the perimeter and the perimeter is still required, but it's not the end-all be-all. We need to be doing things, and zero trust gets after this to prevent that lateral movement, that east-west movement once they've cleared through that perimeter. So from our mindset, it's a maturity model. It's an evolution of where we are today. We're not throwing out everything that we've done already. In fact, what we're trying to do, especially with the zero trust reference architecture and the work that we've done through some of the pilots and through the lab use cases, is really to look at how we can overlay this concept and framework against existing infrastructure that exists today within the DoDIN to really move away from where we are and evolve to best protect and defend our critical data assets.
All right, thanks, guys. So, tell the audience, and I guess this is more to Angie, more to Angie and Joe. But talk to us about how the program came about. You mentioned a little bit about us evolving, from that castle and moat sort of approach to more of a modernized approach. But really, when we sat down within the agency to look at how we wanted to attack the problem, how did we go about that?
People slid pizza under the door to us for about 3 weeks. No, but really, I had the privilege of being the Defensive Cyber Operations Chief at DISA for a couple of years. Captain Larson actually is over there. I'm going to call him out. He was my old boss. And what we learned during the pandemic is that the threat really changed. The threat changed from being network-based to, really application-centric and data-centric. And so after living in the SCIF for 9 months, dealing with new types of threats, we came out of that and decided that we needed to do things a little bit differently, right? So we got together, a group of us, for a few weeks and basically figured out how to take all the work that DISA had already done on Joe's team and come up with a system that would really answer the mail and get in front of the adversary and keep pace with industry. So we were looking for something, you know, really modern and relevant. And what it does, what we came up with, is it extends the perimeter basically from the user all the way to the edge of the data. So when you're extending the perimeter that way and you're doing things like using a tool to verify the user and the device, and then also the hardening status of the device, and then implementing things like conditional access as that traffic flows through the network, putting, you know, security stacks in front of applications and at the customer edge point of presences, and then you take a really solid kind of SOAR-based automated data analytics platform that actually alerts in real time, prioritizes indicators of attack and indicators of compromise. When you put all that together, you have a solution that actually answers the mail when it comes to the sophisticated adversaries that we're seeing here today at the Department of Defense. So also, the name was my idea. I just want to take credit for that.
I was not in the room that day for the name.
I literally put it on a slide and it just like kept going.
Okay, so let's talk. All right, Joe. What are the other capabilities outside of Thunderdome? What else does it rely on? What's of importance here? We made this fancy graphic for you all. We find it quite pretty, but let's talk about the other things that it relies on.
So I'm going to take this opportunity to put a selfish plug in here for Enterprise Icam. So you'll see it highlighted there in the gold band. It's strategically there at the baseline of the Thunderdome infographic, because really identity and Icam, a strong enterprise Icam suite underpins the implementation of Zero Trust and what we're trying to get after it. So one of the main enterprise capabilities that we're looking to develop, and we're working through the pilots and moving into production now, is developing an enterprise Icam suite. So this suite of services consists of identity provider, automated account provisioning, and a master user record. Aligns with the DoD Icam reference architecture, and partnering with DoD CIO and some of the other mission partners that was developed a few years back, that highlighted this critical capability gap at the enterprise level for the department. So we're really excited about what we're doing here. It's a fast-moving train, standing up this capability. It's in high demand, and one that's going to add a lot of value to what we're doing with the DoD. But even more so, as we look to do this broader evolution, and not just DISA's Thunderdome instance, but really getting after Zero Trust for the department in general, Enterprise Icam is a critical capability to really make that a success. So again, we've had some outstanding partnership and a lot of interest across the components, across DoD CIO, so keep an eye out for Enterprise Icam. If you want to talk about that with me on a side panel, side discussion, happy to discuss that with you. But had some outstanding partnership with our industry vendors that are making this available in a larger scale for us. So can't foot stomp enough the importance of Icam to really making Zero Trust a success. But I'll stop my pitch there, and I'll throw it to Drew or Angie to talk the other capabilities.
Yeah, so I think outside of the Thunderdome capabilities, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, so what other
Okay.
things does Thunderdome rely on?
Okay. Yeah, and so I think Angie kind of laid out what is in Thunderdome, but we're going to be relying heavily on our endpoint products as well. Comply to Connect, of course, is going to be part of that, as well as the multiple endpoint products that we currently have on DoD endpoints to help with making those access control decisions for the SASE solution. And then cyber situational awareness is going to be a big component. We already have a footprint in that. Those of you know the BDP and working with Unified Platform. But with Thunderdome, we're specifically going after how we do defensive cyber operations in a cloud-based environment, right? And what kind of a platform works best in a cloud-based environment. How do we get it to where we are looking at a distributed model that is not funneling data to a central point, getting incurring all of the cloud egress costs along the way. So that's going to be a component of Thunderdome. So we're going to rely on the CyberSA piece, but Thunderdome is actually going to plow some new ground in the cloud-based DCO space.
Can I talk?
I assume so. You're on the panel after all.
I feel like we've given everybody the impression that I'm the bully of the group. It may or may not be true. But
If Drew blinks once,
I beat him up later. So my actual favorite part of Thunderdome is actually my two favorite parts are kind of enablers and not really the essence of Zero Trust. But I really love SD-WAN because SD-WAN has the ability to kind of leverage those commercial broadband connections. It's really agile and flexible. You can kind of control your traffic with it, which is really cool, and I think something DISA could really utilize. So you can utilize it in different ways. If there's a threat in the field, you can kind of control traffic really easily that way. But then also, if you just wanted to route traffic differently, if you wanted to route streaming traffic one way and then FTP traffic another way, it's super easy to do that with SD-WAN. It's a very, very big, important enabler of Zero Trust and Thunderdome. Can't say enough about it. I actually really want the sites that we migrate to be SD-WAN enabled before we even extend SASE to them. And I think Steve and I might end up battling over that. But the other piece that I love is the cyber analytics platform. I think that's just because I have a love for DCO, but I really want to arm our analysts with the right information at the right time when it's relevant in real time, where they can actually do something about it instead of kind of just being up against some typical problems with various data analytics platforms where that don't implement SOAR and that don't really prioritize the alerts the way that the analysts need in order to do their job. So I'm really excited about SD-WAN and cyber analytics platform, but honestly, the whole thing is really a system, and it all works together to address all the different pillars of Zero Trust. So we can't really do just a piece of it. We have to kind of roll it out as one thing.
thanks. So let's move. We're going to jump one. There we go. So let's jump to this slide here, and let's talk about, if you all walk out of here with one impression, I want it to be that Thunderdome is not we do this, we've achieved Zero Trust, we all get to go out and have a beer, right? It's not done, it's not a singular solution, and it's a constant evolution. It's really a set of design principles above anything else, Zero Trust, right? So it's not that we're just going to we're going to take this capability, we're going to go out and we can declare success. So with that though, Drew, can you talk to the folks here about the different components that we have in the system and sort of some of the intent there?
Sure. So this slide in particular takes the 7 pillars that we laid out in the Zero Trust reference architecture and kind of lays out the different capabilities we're going after to reconstruct our architecture for a Zero Trust mindset. Across the top we have user, device, network, application, and data, which tracks with what a lot of what NIST is doing. We also brought in visibility and analytics as a key piece, as well as the automation and orchestration piece, because in our minds, having visibility into that architecture and continuous monitoring for if you assume breach, is really going to be key. And then on top of that, automation and orchestration. We have borne many scars through the management of things like JRSS, and to know that without automation, this could not be possible, right? With pushing these security capabilities out to the edge as we are, if we don't automate a lot of that, if we don't centrally manage those components, then it's the management overhead is going to be too burdensome, and we would fail before we even got started. So with that, on the left-hand side, Angie kind of went through a number of these. I know some of the people up here went through it. SASE, of course, we see as a key component for this, which is going to be doing the access control for us, making those decisions based off of the user, based off of the device, health and status of the device. SD-WAN, Angie talked about earlier, both looking at how we can bring software-defined networking to extend to the tactical side with the Fourth Estate and other service partners if they partner with us. But looking at the DIS and core and what we're doing on the backbone, and how do we bring software-defined networking to that as well. Then we have our virtual security stacks, both at the application layer, which we're looking for a lot of things around microsegmentation, scanning, continuous monitoring, things of that nature. And then the edge, and that's what Angie talked about, moving that customer edge from a mid-tier capability to that customer point of presence where they're hooking into the DISN, right? And pushing that security farther down toward the customer edge. And then
So let me poll the audience real quick. So those security stacks there, who can tell me how old the DoD DMZ construct is? Can I get 5 years? 10 years? I heard 11. I got 11. I'm going to give it to you at 11. It's about 11 or 12 years old. What? 2001. Okay, I was just out of college. It's a good year. All right, so 2001 is the last time that DoD DMZ architecture was updated, right? This is us trying to drive, hey, we really need to rethink the way that we're doing this DoD DMZ architecture. So you'll see some movement in that direction as well from the department, but this is our foray in the, sorry, Drew, I didn't mean to derail you, but
no,
that's
that's okay.
Fun piece of trivia.
It's your
And
panel,
of course,
it's your
I
panel,
had the
man.
former DISA CTO back there giving away the answer.
Yeah, I have a feeling that
I think he did
the
most
man
of
in
it.
the back was intimately involved with the last update to that. So,
Go ahead.
is this where I blink once?
Yeah.
And so rounding it out, Joe covered Icam with the shameless plugs. Comply to Connect, in fact, our whole endpoint suite of capabilities, as well as working with mission partners on what they're doing on the endpoint, and then the data analytics piece and bringing in that DCO in the cloud. And then, that we have kind of that crosswalk, if you'll notice. There's definitely heavy automation orchestration in software-defined networking and the data analytics piece when we want to bring in SOAR and those types of technologies. You could argue that every single box should be checked in that automation side, but that wouldn't really look that nice, so we kept it just to those two.
We went with
So,
aesthetics
Yeah.
over accuracy. No, but what I really love about this new, what I really love, I'm gonna get us peak slip later, I feel it. So what I really love about this new network and security architecture, though, is that it really does streamline what we have at the endpoint, and it nicely, it flows the traffic nicely through the network. It kind of, when you extend the perimeter down to the user and out to the edge of the data, you don't require a mid-tier. So what I think the users are going to benefit from is a network with much less hops and a lot less latency and a lot more availability, high redundancy.
So let's talk about, there's been we've talked a lot about Zero Trust. We've got the executive order out there from POTUS. We've got the digital modernization strategy from DoD CIO. The Zero Trust architecture, Joe, that your team was intimately familiar with. So Joe, can you talk a little bit about how this relates to all of those?
Thanks, Drew.
You have to give him $1 every
I
time
did.
you borrow his microphone.
I gave him the water, so I feel like we're even. So I guess I would say that there's deliberate and direct alignment between all these things, what we're doing here. So between the strategies, the overarching strategies that have been put out, the digital modernization strategy, the executive order, our team within our division here and within Dr. Herman's cybersecurity and analytics division, we've had intimate involvement throughout the process, throughout the life cycle of the development of many of these strategies and documents. So partnering with DoD CIO, Intel community, Cyber Command, industry, academia, NIST, and so forth. We've been part of this from the beginning. So Everything that we're doing with the Zero Trust reference architecture, those principles and concepts, are stemming from these other parent documents that we were involved in. So there's absolutely deliberate and direct alignment and cohesion between all the strategy and what we're trying to implement here through these various service offerings. As I mentioned before, Icam being a baseline of it, I'm going to continue to shamelessly plug Icam. Icam, again, we were part of the Zero Trust reference design effort with CIO to identify those capability gaps. Those have led us into developing Zero Trust reference architecture and ensuring that the key concepts and enabling capabilities that are outlined in a lot of the strategy documents are included as we process through and start implementing and designing solutions like Thunderdome and how we get after implementing these concepts. So absolutely, I would foot stomp that not only are we tracking it and aware of it, the visibility and the attention that it's getting at the highest of levels within government, but we are absolutely aligned to that strategically in everything that we're doing here.
Joe made my job so easy because he spent so much time planning with his team what Zero Trust is, right? So when it came to actually design something to implement it, to physically implement Zero Trust, we had all this documentation and all of these plans already made. So I really owe him a lot because it's very easy for me to implement something or to at least conceptualize something that had already been planned out, and basically what we needed to do is figure out, okay, what are the best capabilities that really answer all of those different pillars, and how do we put that together in a way where it's a system? But without all of Joe's hard work over the last 2 years, building all those documents and taking all that direction from DoD CIO. What? I'm being nice.
You're making it sound like I'm doing everything. That is a fallacy. We have a tremendous support team, so thank you for that.
We have a good team.
We've got Brandon Iskey, his chief engineer, standing right there.
Woo!
So,
and for that, Joe, you get to live.
thank you.
This is what
I didn't
happens
plug
when
them.
I'm nice, then I'm,
So, No, thank you. But I do want to foot stomp that. It's been a tremendous partnership between CIO, Cyber Command, Intel community. NIST has been great. And really I think the foot stomp thing that we want to get after is that DISA can't do it alone. It's not DISA's job to do it alone.
Yeah.
It's not the DoD's job to do it alone. We need to partner with our industry peers and academia to get after this. Everybody has a responsibility in this. And so we've had tremendous partnership to this point and look forward to additional partnership as we continue to evolve this.
So let me extend from where you're going there, right? So, so like I mentioned before, Thunderdome's not it, right? Thunderdome is just getting us started going down this path. It was the obvious path, and I also want to give a little credit. I don't see them, although they could be here. To the folks at DIU. We actually partnered with DIU. We saw in one of the one of the commercial. Oh yeah, there's Johnson. There we go. So we saw. Oh, and there's Jeff. There we go. There's our DIU partners. So we worked with them on their secure cloud access effort, and that led to the thinking behind Thunderdome. So we worked very closely with them. Developed a number of artifacts with them. As that effort moved forward, the natural progression was now into Thunderdome to grow it a little bit larger, take it with a more Doden sort of view to things. So I really did want to make sure that we gave credit to them. But we're not done just with this. So we've got the OTA. I'm sure many of you are aware. The OTA is out on there on the street. We're getting close to that. But even once that wraps, we need help from industry to your guys, your comments earlier. We need help from industry to continue to flesh that out. There are going to be gaps and seams. We know that, right? Especially when we talk about, say, the classified arena, and those, how it's going to plug into that, and how it's going to deal with mobile devices, those kinds of things. We purposely backed off and didn't put a number of those things into Thunderdome because it would have been just too much. It would have collapsed under its own weight. So, I wanted to express the fact that even once we close the OTA, there's still going to be other opportunities and other things to do. So with that, Drew, I mentioned Thunderdome's only the start of our strategy looking, and here's my beyond Thunderdome, right?
There is no such thing.
See what I did there? what other help do you think that we need from industry as, to move forward?
So there are a couple things, right? I mean, I think this is newer to the DoD. It's not completely brand new to the commercial space. Kind of best practices with how this is being done in industry, and then looking at scale. Scale always bites us whenever we go down the road of new technologies, and making sure that we can scale these appropriately. One of the big concerns that we have collectively is interoperability, right, in this space. We can't have it to where there are no standards and there's no interoperability. Yeah. We can't make it where the DoD becomes a winner-take-all environment where we can only have one solution, right? There needs to be standards to where we have multiple different solutions. Take in the, in the case of SASE solutions, we have a bunch of enterprise applications. We have Air Force partners, Army partners, all service partners who are coming and hitting our enterprise applications. If we have a SASE solution in front of them, we need to buy a user license for them. Well, if Air Force decides on a different solution for their SASE product, they now have to buy another user license and put it on the endpoint and pay double for a SASE solution, right? Just because they're going to a different site. To me, that's one of the biggest risks that we have, right? And so we're either going to end up in a spot where we figure out how we're going to do this, we're going to figure out the federation. Zero trust doesn't lend itself to distributed trust at all, right? So we need to work collectively to figure out how we tackle that problem. Or else big DoD is going to come down hard and say, we got one solution. We're going to mandate one solution and one solution only, and that's it. And I don't think that that's a place where we want to be or where industry wants to be. So those are probably my biggest risks right now when it comes to this zero trust concept.
Okay. Angie, you want to?
It's like you can read my mind. No, I just wanted to foot stomp that interoperability part. That is such a key element of what we're doing here across the DoD. So, yeah, DISA can do its own thing with Thunderdome, but when it comes to, pulling in all the other services and combatant commands and agencies, that interoperability piece is key. So it's one of the major things we want to test during the prototype, and we do need help from industry to understand that a little bit better. And it is a known gap. Well, not a known gap, but a known kind of issue
Yeah.
that we know we're going to come up against. So I just wanted to say that Drew is right.
I mean, really, when you talk about email, you've got SMTP. When you talk about directory services, you've got LDAP. When you talk about identity federation, you've got SAML. When you start to move into some of these other realms, we run out of standards really quickly. And so, yeah, to foot stomp with industry, we made the very specific choice at the onset that we weren't going to go down a single DoD route. Mainly because, to be frank, the amount of the discussion and debate that would have occurred with that would have taken us many, many more years to try to work through as a department, just being very frank. So we explicitly went the route of the potential federation. So now we need help as we get into that potential federation. We don't want to, the answer is not one, the answer is also not 50. So we've got to figure out how to make this all work together, and that's certainly a place where we're going to need industry's help. So we've got a little bit of time left, so I wanted to offer Joe another opportunity, the shameless plug, his
Nobody wants to hear about Icam.
his program. So so my personal time with Icam goes way back, right? When I was a contractor, not with DISA, long before I came to DISA, with a different part of the government, I got to work on a number of identity solutions. And really with identity, it all comes down to attributes. And when I mentioned how I'd become a little disillusioned with zero trust, the concept of, the buzzword of zero trust, it was really once I started looking at zero trust as really just an attribute problem. everything becomes an attribute. It's a long math equation at the end of the day, right? We tend to focus on identity. People talk about ABAC, attribute-based access control, and identity is certainly core to what we are doing here. But really, if you step back and look at Zero Trust, everything's an attribute. The device, the state the device is in, when's the last time I saw the device, time of day, network it's coming from, blah, blah, blah. All of those things become attributes about the user session that we're ultimately making a decision on. But at the core is the identity of the user. And so let's spend a few minutes talking about identity, because you all heard in the director's remarks this morning, he talked about Icam, and I got a very special, loving call out. And so, you know, we are working to deliver the identity strategy for the department. We're going through a pretty significant change. And before I steal any more Joe's thunder here, go ahead, Joe.
No, you're good, sir. So this is our what we refer to lovingly as our Icam placemat. This infographic came out this year, so I'm sure it's not new to everyone in the audience here today who may have heard us discuss Icam previously. But really, as I mentioned earlier, we the department, we need a strong enterprise Icam capability. Over the years, through need, as we've gone through moving from pencil and paper to automating things and standing up data centers and so on, we've relied heavily individually as agencies and components, oftentimes on our own independent native local identity providers. And there's been goodness in that, but truly in line with what we're getting ahead with, evolving from castle and moat, defense in depth to Zero Trust, Icam needs to evolve as well. And we need to start adopting standard Icam capabilities across the government. For a long time here, I think we're all familiar with the conflict between, especially with our warfighters here, between VA records and DoD, and sharing information between the two, and how that continues to be something that we need to get after. And Icam really ties into this argument. Again, how do we federate data? As people move throughout their careers, I think you'll have heard at the keynote lunch today, there was a point made about encouraging growth and opportunity for our key resources, our cyber defenders here, to get a full breadth of their career of experience, not just in one agency, but across the department, across components, in academia and whatnot. With that goodness of that, you have multiple challenges, and not least of all is identity, and how does your record move with you throughout? How do you federate data? How do we make sure that as my roles and responsibilities change and where I work, how does that translate through and map back across organizations? Again, and underpinning this is not just ease of use and interoperability. It really gets after security. I'm not going to embarrass anybody by asking them to raise their hand how many people still use username and password for very critical systems. It's scary. Enterprise Icam, we need to get after enforcing this, and there's challenges associated with it, with funding and resourcing and skill sets and talent. But what we need to do to help knock down those hurdles is what we're doing today, and putting out a true enterprise Icam capability that the department can come to and leverage, get the standardization, enforce and enable data sharing across, and enforce and enable federation of data, and really help to raise that security baseline. And putting in automation to move away from the onus and burden on supervisors that may not be doing their job like they should of revalidating whether Drew Malloy in his new position or his old position still needs to maintain the same roles and accesses that he did previously. Is anybody going through and making sure on a regular basis that as things change, access controls and whatnot are being enforced and accounts and permissions are being removed? Again, to not just get after, again, ease of use and doing things correctly, but it's underpinned by security. Really getting after insider threat as well. So, all these things tie back into enterprise identity and enterprise Icam capability, and what we're trying to get after here with our identity provider solutions, with our automated account provisioning, that's going to allow not just the FM community, who has a financial management community, has a vested interest in this to support their audits, but the full spectrum of DoD applications. So again, enterprise Icam, in order for us to be successful with Zero Trust, we need to have a strong Icam solution, and I think we're doing some good things today to get after that.
I just wanted to say that as enamored as I am with SD-WAN and cyber analytics, ICAM is actually a foundation of a zero trust solution, so can't have it without ICAM. Everything revolves around identifying the user and the device. And we can do that a little bit with C2C, and we can do it a little bit with SASE, but really ICAM is the key to doing that. And so, you know, having SASE, ICAM, and C2C work together to verify the identity of the user and the device is key, and we can't do that without ICAM being the foundation.
Yeah, so, you know, in the director's remarks this morning, you heard him talk, and you've seen in the press about killing the CAC. And really that's more about, and I believe he mentioned it this morning, diversity of the credential, right? So 15 years ago, the department went in the direction of the Common Access Card. It's treated us, frankly, very well over the years. However, the rest of the world didn't go in that direction. You can't pick up a mobile device and throw your Common Access Card into it and log into anything. So we've seen an emergence in recent years of another number of other capabilities. In addition to that, you know, during the pandemic, the department stood up a capability called CVR, Commercial Virtual Remote, where we used username, password, and a multi-factor component to it, text-based, phone call, or an authenticator app. We were able to gather a tremendous amount of data from the 1.5 million users and the use of that capability. So we learned a lot, which is now informing our decisions going forward with ICAM. And what you're going to see from the department is a diversity of credential approach, where we'll have the CAC, because that's our Geneva Convention card, that's a physical access card to a number of things. But then also we're going to be, you know, moving fast in the direction of username, password, MFA, other physical crypto tokens, FIDO, and we are looking for help from industry to help us, you know, kind of figure some of that out as we move forward. So with that, I think we've got about 20 minutes left, right? Okay. So I'm sure that we've answered every one of your questions over the last 40 minutes. There's absolutely nothing left to talk about. But for the fun and games, I'll open the floor, and anybody want to ask some questions? There's a microphone right there. Don't be shy. Man, we really did good.
Awkward silence is not my strength, so I'll fill in the space while somebody walks up to the mic. I just want to say we decided to go with another transaction agreement as our acquisition strategy for the prototype, because in OTAs, you know, you never end up where you think you're going to end up when you start, and we wanted to be able to have a flexible, you know, kind of agile way to change requirements as we go, and to kind of learn our lessons as we're implementing, so that we can fix them immediately instead of waiting until the FAR-based contract is over to do that. So that was my little pitch for our OTA. There we go.
I think we have a taker.
Hallelujah.
Brave man.
Is it on? Yes, it's on.
Yep.
Joe DuPont from Mantech. My question is regarding encrypted email. So you talk about the CAC. The only way I can encrypt an email today, going back to the government, is I have to have a CAC with PKI certificates.
Yes.
Well, that's a problem in and of itself, getting
Yes.
the CAC. So what's the solution?
So that leads to another discussion that's ongoing within the department. Navy's probably leaning the furthest forward in this, questioning the future of S-MIME. So there's a lot of questions about how do we want to, should our strategy forward rely more heavily on a DLP sort of approach versus an S-MIME based approach? So S-MIME is pretty problematic, right? Like, try using S-MIME with Gmail or most other systems. S-MIME on a mobile device, pretty problematic. And so we're stepping back, and we're starting to, you know, when the concept first came out about, hey, let's rethink S-MIME, my initial reaction was, holy, what? No, wait, we can't do that. But the reality is, when you look at a lot of the DLP capabilities and the way that we're actually using S-MIME today, and some of the DLP capabilities that are in some of these platforms, it does start to make one wonder, are we really getting the value out of S-MIME for the trouble that it tends to present? So you're absolutely right. We can't do S-MIME without certificates on the device. But at the same time, you know, if we go, and I don't want to name specific vendors, but if we go to other, say, USB-based token devices, we can put PIV certificates on there. In fact, the machine that I operate on daily, I don't actually put my CAC into it anymore. I have one of these devices plugged in. I operate just like anybody else. I can sign, encrypt email, log in, use my cert on any number of sites. So I think that's part of the initial answer, but I completely agree with you. We've got an SMIME challenge down the line if we decide to move to a credential other than a crypto-based certificate. Thanks. Anybody else? There we go.
Hi, I'm also Joe. Former,
you doing, Joe?
Former
Yep.
District Chief of Staff and now consultant. My question is, based on what I've seen from the down selects in the OTA so far, I'm wondering how you're thinking about DDIL and the gap that may represent to what you're currently working on.
Any of you want to?
Take that one.
Yeah, so without getting into anything acquisition sensitive, and Dylan's sitting over on the side ready to tell on me if I do.
He's got his hand on the microphone plug, ready
Yeah.
to just yank the whole thing.
Dylan winks at me.
Yeah.
I punch true.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
So disconnected ops is going to be a huge issue, right? And part of Thunderdome, part of the idea behind Thunderdome was how do we move these capabilities to the SIPRNet side quickly? Thunderdome kind of originated out of some thinking around JRSS and the NDA language, and should we keep it? And they paused all deployments onto SIPR. So there's definitely a motivation when you hear JADC2 coming. The majority of C2 data is relying on our higher side networks, and how do we support that? So from the beginning, Thunderdome has always been scoped to say, how do we support SIPRNet operations, and how do we support the disconnected environment, right? How do we make sure that we don't architect a system to where if it becomes disconnected, now everything fails secure and you can't get access to your applications because you can't phone home to the mothership, right? That is a huge issue in the C2 community, and every single technology that you try to modernize in C2, the first question from a guy in the back of the room is, well, what about disconnected, right? What about DDIL?
He was in the middle of the room. He was middle of the room.
Yeah, and so, and it's fair, absolutely valid, right? So we need to construct our architecture with that in mind, and if it is a composition of different technologies that give us that ability to work disconnected ops, then that's something we're also open to looking at. But we understand that no single solution is going to solve all of our problems, but absolutely IL6 and disconnected ops are top of mind when we talk about Thunderdome and the acquisition.
So if I can add on to that, Drew, I think the other side too, that as we start to see more containerization of applications and containerization of these security functions, I think that helps us too in that disconnected arena, because it's easier to deploy in a disconnected set versus, I don't know, perhaps an enterprise. You can go far more granular, I guess, than we could otherwise, and more automated. So go ahead, rush for it.
Hi, panelists. So how do you see Thunderdome affecting JRSS, CAPS, BCAPS, things like that? Part one, and then part two, how soon do you see those effects coming into play?
Do you want me to answer that?
Go for it, Angie.
All right, leave it to
And then
Esteban
Drew.
to ask the hard question. We've been working together since like 2010, long time. So the DMI XCOM and the DoD-CIO made a decision to sunset JRSS within 5 years. The good news is that both Thunderdome and JRSS exist in the same DISA directorate, and we plan to run both programs side by side so that as we ramp up Thunderdome, we start ramping down JRSS. How does that work? How do we get at that? We're setting up various transition working groups across the department, but also with DoD CIO and internally to DISA to make sure that it's very seamless and that we do that transition in a way that doesn't break anybody. We also see the cloud access points as eventually going away and being replaced by SASE as well. And you know, it's not a bad thing to reduce your physical gateways. So that's a good thing. It's a cost savings to the department, and as we roll out Thunderdome, things at the mid-tier and extra gateways for cloud just aren't necessary. Did that?
Yeah.
Did you wanna?
Yeah, I would probably, as Angie said, we're working with the CIO now on figuring out what the JRSS transition strategy is. It was tagged for sunset within 5 years. Part of the complexity is figuring out the services roadmap as well, and I don't know if we pointed this out enough, but this is not the department's solution for everything, right? We're partnering with the services. They are doing their own pilots within the zero trust space, and we didn't, you know, as I was talking about SASE earlier, and the mandate of thou shalt use this one solution, we didn't want to go there. That's not where we wanted to start. We didn't want to have an enterprise capability where all the services had to use our system. We're open to partnering, and we've had an interest from a number of services who've already said we would like to partner with how you're doing this. But this is not a mandated system, so the transition from an enterprise system to a collection of different offerings from both DISA and the services is also going to be one of the complexities that we have to navigate.
So one of the other, so specific to the BCAPs and IAPs and that type of thing, as well as we talked about the DoD DMZ architecture, each one of those capabilities grew up at a different time, right? So, and in a different way. And so what we're trying to do here under Thunderdome is unify that approach.
Yes.
So regardless of where the user necessarily sits, they should have access to the data that they need as long as they're authorized to get it and they're coming from a trusted device, so on and so forth. But you know, the way that we have the caps laid out, and the caps are actually on their generation 3 right now, a tremendous departure from our Gen 1 cloud access points. It's gotten a lot leaner, a lot faster, a much better product. But even that, we're looking as part of Thunderdome as how we can rethink that it doesn't have to be a BCAP, it doesn't have to be an IAP, that kind of thing. You know, I mentioned CVR earlier and some of the things that we learned with respect to authentication. That also helped us to sort of drive down the road of what we wanted to do with Thunderdome. When I would sit there on a CVR meeting and think about me sitting at home in my basement and VPNing back into the infrastructure just to turn around and go back out across the internet to access data to come back around and back to my endpoint. These are the kind of things that we're looking to eliminate. So it is a rethink of that. JRSS has been, you know, it's easy to pick on certain aspects of it, but the reality is that JRSS has been a tremendous opportunity for the department to unify a number of capabilities and standardize a number of capabilities. So JRSS has done a lot for us over the years. This is just the next logical progression and frankly where IT as a whole is going. And so that's why we're very excited about it. So one last call for questions if anybody wants to rush the microphone. Okay, so I'd like to say thank you to the panel here for all of you guys coming out. I really sincerely appreciate all of you, standing room, in the seats, what have you, coming out to here. We are super excited about what we can do with Thunderdome and really happy to see that you all are too. So looking forward to what the future has to bring for us. So thank you everybody, appreciate it, have a great rest of the conference.